All right, let's talk about a secret. A secret that connects a wobbly bridge, thousands of flashing fireflies, and even the beating of your own heart. It's the absolutely surprising science of synchronization.
You know, the universe is supposed to get more chaotic, more disordered over time. That's basically the second law of thermodynamics. And yet, we see order popping up everywhere, completely on its own. So what is this hidden force that's pulling all these different things together against all odds?
Well, to figure this out, our story actually starts not in some physics lab, but right in the heart of London, with an engineering marvel that turned into a spectacular and very public mystery.
So picture this. It's June 10th, 2000. Thousands of people are flocking to walk across the stunning new Millennium Bridge. But as more and more people poured on, something started to go very wrong. The bridge began to sway. At first just a little, and then a whole lot. It was this terrifying, completely unexpected, side-to-side wobble.
I mean, it got so bad that the police had to start limiting how many people could even get on it. Just 2 days after its grand opening, this 18 million pound project was shut down completely. It was a massive embarrassment, and it wouldn't reopen for almost 2 years.
So what on earth went wrong? You know that old rule about armies breaking step when they cross a bridge to prevent something just like this? Well, this wasn't an army. This was just a random crowd of people. How could they bring a state-of-the-art bridge to its knees?
To find the answer, we actually have to go way back, like 350 years back, to a clue that was discovered by one of the greatest scientific minds in history, completely by accident.
Back in 1665, the Dutch physicist Christian Huygens, the guy who invented the pendulum clock, was homesick. He happened to hang 2 of his new clocks from the same wooden beam, and then he noticed something really bizarre. No matter how he started them, within about half an hour, the pendulums would always end up swinging in perfect opposition. You know, as one went tick, the other went tock.
So of course, being a scientist, he tested this. When he put the clocks on separate walls, their timekeeping would drift apart, like you'd expect. But as soon as they were back on that shared beam, they'd sync right back up again. He figured out that these tiny, imperceptible vibrations traveling through the wood were linking them together.
And just like that, Huygens had stumbled upon the secret ingredient to synchronization, something called coupling. It's basically any connection, any pathway that lets things with a rhythm transfer a little bit of energy and start to influence each other.
Okay, so that's the what. But how does coupling actually force things to get in sync? I mean, especially when they all have their own slightly different natural rhythms to begin with. Here's a good way to think about it. Let's say you're out running with a friend, and maybe they're just naturally a bit faster than you are. If you're coupled, maybe you're just chatting and encouraging each other, your friend might unconsciously slow down a bit, and you might push yourself to speed up. And if that coupling is strong enough, eventually you'll both fall into the exact same pace, completely overcoming your natural differences.
Now, scientists actually have a mathematical formula for this. It's called the Kuramoto model. It sounds complicated, but the idea is really simple. It just says that each moving part adjusts its speed based on its own natural rhythm, plus a little nudge from all the others it's connected to. The stronger that connection, the stronger the coupling, the bigger the nudge.
But here is the wildest part. Synchronization doesn't happen gradually. You don't just get a little more synchronized as you turn up the coupling. Instead, nothing happens, and then you hit this one critical point, and bam, the entire system just snaps into sync all at once. It's called a phase transition, and it's the exact same kind of thing that happens when water suddenly freezes solid into ice.
And this principle, it's not just for old clocks on a beam. It turns out to be one of nature's most fundamental rules, and you can see it playing out on every scale you can possibly imagine.
I mean, just look up at the moon. There's a reason we only ever see one side of it. It's because its rotation period is perfectly synchronized with its orbit around the Earth. The coupling force here? It's gravity, a force that has locked these two motions together over billions of years.
And this is not some weird fluke, by the way. At least 34 other moons in our solar system are also tidally locked to their planets. That is cosmic scale synchronization, all driven by the simple coupling of gravity.
We see it in biology, too. It's incredible. In places like Southeast Asia, thousands upon thousands of fireflies, each one with its own individual rhythm, will start flashing in perfect, breathtaking unison. The coupling is purely visual. Just seeing a neighbor flash gives a little nudge to a firefly's internal clock, and pretty soon the entire swarm becomes one giant, pulsing beacon. And this gets really personal, because in our own bodies, synchronization is literally a matter of life and death. The millions of cells in your heart have to contract in perfect synchrony to pump blood. When they lose that sync, it's a condition called fibrillation. It's catastrophic. So yeah, too little sync is a huge problem. But, as we're about to see, too much sync can be just as dangerous.
Okay, so now that we know all this about coupling and phase transitions, let's go back to London and finally solve the mystery of that wobbly bridge.
It turns out, the engineers had the entire problem completely backwards. They thought a synchronized crowd was what made the bridge wobble, but the exact opposite was true. It was the bridge's own slight natural sway that acted as the coupling force. It subconsciously taught thousands of people to adjust their steps to match its rhythm, to avoid feeling unsteady.
And you have to see the data they collected after they closed it. It's absolutely wild. With 156 people on the bridge, everything was fine. Barely any sway. But add just 10 more people, and the system crossed that critical point. The bridge went through a phase transition into that dramatic, synchronized, and terrifying wobble.
So what you get is this vicious cycle, this positive feedback loop. The tiny initial sway from the bridge causes people to sync up their footsteps. Their newly synced footsteps then amplify the sway. That bigger sway then forces even more people to sync up. The solution, by the way, the engineers installed special dampers. They're basically giant shock absorbers that just reduce the coupling enough to break that cycle for good.
You know, this whole story is about so much more than just a wobbly bridge. It's really about a fundamental challenge at the absolute frontier of science.
For centuries, the main approach in science was reductionism. Breaking things down into their smallest parts to understand them. But what synchronization shows us is that sometimes the real magic happens when you put all those parts back together. This is the whole field of complex systems, which studies how simple parts, following simple rules, can create unbelievably complex and unpredictable group behavior.
When you think about it, from our economies and ecosystems, all the way to consciousness itself, we are surrounded by these systems where the whole is so much more than the sum of its parts. And that really leaves us with the biggest question of all. How do we even begin to understand the whole once all the parts start working together?